This is Brian Evans. I'm the pastor of Oakwood Baptist Church in Flowery Branch, Georgia, and I am the assistant to the president of Independent Baptist Online College. And I want to come to you today and tell you about how I paid $500,000 for the King James Bible. That's right. I have paid $500,000, well, really, maybe even $600,000 for the King James Bible. Years ago, I was in my office and one of my good men came in and they sat down with me and they had a folder in their hand. Inside that folder was a long list of things compiled by my friend against my position on the King James Bible as being the inspired, infallible, and inerrant Word of God preserved in English. He had come to the place where he no longer believed that, and he wanted me to change my position or else. And so he brought me these items, and I loved him. I told him, look, man, I'm not going to lie to you. If I've been oversold on this King James Bible thing, I'm not going to lie to you or my church. I'll look through your stuff, and if you're right, I'll admit it. So I began to look through his stuff, and I very quickly realized he wasn't correct. And I began to write him responses, answering his objections to my position. And as I did so, I learned so much more than I had even already been aware of about our great King James Bible, and became more persuaded than ever that it was and is the inspired, infallible, and inerrant Word of God without error preserved in English. So I began to present my responses to my friend, and he did not take it well. And he wrote a 5-page letter and mailed it to everyone in my church. And oddly enough, there was nothing good about me in that letter. And then number two, he never mentioned our disagreement on the King James Bible. He somehow forgot to mention that when he tried to turn the entire church against me. Well, his little plan was foiled, and nobody bought into what he was saying outside of a few people right around him. And he left the church. But when he left, I lost his tithe. And he was the single largest contributor to my church. Every year, he would give in excess of $35,000 to $40,000 a year to our church. And the little group of people that were around him made about another $10,000 a year, something like that. So when he walked out the door and they left with him, it cost me about $50,000 a year. And it's been about 10, 11, 12 years ago. So I'm up to about $500,000 or maybe even $600,000 that we paid for our position, our stand on the King James Bible. And it was tough for a while. I'm not going to kid you. It hurt us financially, and we didn't quickly recoup that. It took several years to recover. That's an unusual man who will give that kind of money. And when I sat across the desk from him that very first time when he came in to tell me about his objection to my position on the King James Bible, I knew right then in my heart it probably wasn't going to end well, and that it was going to cost our church, our ministry, a lot of money. And maybe it could cost us everything, because I felt like he was a man of influence in our church. And he was to some degree, not as much as I feared. But I made a decision that day to stand with the Word of God, to stay with my position, and not to bow, not to bend, not to change what I said, not to just quit saying it. You know, if I had agreed just not to say that the King James Bible is the inspired, inerrant, infallible Word of God preserved in English without error, if I had just stopped saying that, well, I don't know, he might have stayed. But I couldn't, because that's what I believe. And so, you know, if you're preparing for the ministry, let me just say, preach truth and let everything else fall where it may. And buy the truth and sell it not. And it'll serve you well. Trust God by preaching what you believe to be the Word of God, and let everything else happen. Whatever happens, happens. 30 years now, 30 plus years, I've been preaching the Word of God. 20 years at my current church. And I'm just telling you, don't be afraid to trust God by telling people the truth. Paul said, you know, I have not held back anything from you that was profitable. That word, that little phrase, held back, means to hide it behind your back, sort of, to hold it out of view. And all I had to do was hold my position out of view, and he might have stayed. But I couldn't do it because I believe it to be the case. And I believed it would be helpful to my people. that everybody needs a final authority that they can read, that they can be accountable to, they can order their steps, and that is the King James Bible to English-speaking people. So don't be afraid to say what you believe, and then whatever happens, happens. It cost us dearly, but look, it lasted for a little while, but then God started providing more people. We started growing, and now our ministry is debt-free. We're in good shape. We've been blessed beyond measure. And so just hold to the truth, preach the word, buy the truth, sell it not. Don't be afraid. And if you are afraid, go ahead and do it anyway. God bless you. Hope it's been an encouragement to you.